ChortleCast. I'm Jake, and it's just me today. It's another Jake solo special on the road at night. So it's very dark. It's very dark. You can't see around me. You can barely see me. You can only see me because I have a laptop that I'm holding as a light because it's dark and it's nighttime. But if you're an audio listener listening, you don't know that. That's okay. If you're a video listener, thank you. Thank you for being here. Leave a like, all that good stuff. Anyway, if you didn't know, this is ChortleCast, the official podcast of Chortle Games, where we talk about TV shows, movies, video games, anime, whatever the heck we want to talk about. And we got a great show for you this week. It's going to be a little bit shorter because it is a Jake Solo special, but also because I am very tired because I've been chasing billionaires around cities, and that's a little bit of an exaggeration. So, only a little bit, not very much. So I'm exhausted. So we're going to do this, and now I'm being called by somebody. Now I'm not being called by somebody. So we're going to do this. All right. So we always start the show with a little thing we call catch up, and that's where we talk about what games we've been playing and all this good stuff. So I'm going to, since it's just me, I'm only going to talk about the only thing that I've cared about video game wise for a while, which has been Red Dead. I finally beat this story, the main campaign, which is very long. I mentioned on our live stream of Destiny this week that Steven said to me, it's like, it overstays its welcome, right? It's like, maybe, but it was very long. So I'm going to be pretty spoilery here, but I just want to talk about the kind of my final thoughts on the game now that I've seen most, at least 90 or 80% of what it offers. So when I first started the game, and I'm introduced to Arthur and everyone, I didn't like Arthur as much because I was used to John and how John acted and how John was treated, and so it took me a while to warm up to Arthur, but I did love Arthur and the gang and interacting with the rest of the members of the gang and following their stories through and through. And a lot of reviewers will talk about how the first half of the game, before you go, there's a point where you go to an island, Guam, I think is where it is, and people talk about after that point, it becomes very frustrating and the story's not very good and all this and that. For the first little bit of that was true. I didn't enjoy it. But strangely enough, at a certain point, this is a weird thing to like really hook you into the story, but at a certain point Arthur gets tuberculosis and is slowly starting to die, and that affects the story obviously, but it also affects your gameplay, which kind of frustrated me but was interesting. Basically I was sick and I couldn't use my Deadeye or some of my other abilities, and it was harder to recharge those abilities, and I sometimes couldn't fully heal because I was sick, which was an interesting and daring gameplay mechanic. I was frustrated with it at first, but as the story went on, I kind of understood it. But at that point, I was really hooked on Arthur's narrative and story, because he was this bad guy who had maybe tried to be a decent bad guy, not just cruel to people, but suddenly he had tuberculosis, but he still had to, and he was struggling with, because I played at a high honor rate, he was struggling with this. He spent his whole life for what? Because Dutch's plan is falling apart, and the gang is falling apart, and he's dying, and they all know it, so they're kind of iffy on him. But anyway, I don't know. Arthur, the way I played it, where I played it high honor, it was very interesting, and I really enjoyed how much the game opened up from an honor perspective, because one of my complaints early on in the game was like I kept feeling like I was forced into doing things that I didn't want to do. But at that point, once he got tuberculosis, it was very much like, hey, do you want to continue to be a really bad guy for the rest of your life, what little bit of your life you have left, or do you want to try to do something that had meaning? And I thought that was a really enticing story arc to go through. There were a lot of really good moments, but gee whiz, Arthur just what a life, man. He was right-hand man to Dutch, and Dutch abandoned him at least 3 times that I could count in the main story. At the very beginning, in fact, in my Let's Play, I was like, are they gonna just like leave me? Because at the very beginning, they're talking about the Blackwater deal that went bad, and Arthur was like, what happened on that boat? And Dutch was like, we just couldn't get to you, Arthur. It's no big deal. And I was immediately like, did they try to abandon me somewhere? Later on in the story, you get kidnapped by a rival gang, and the gang leader comes down to like torture you, and he's like, he says something along the lines of, I'm using you as bait to entice the rest of your gang to come, and then I'm gonna kill him. My immediate thought, and I still think this is how it went, but my immediate thought was, my gang's not coming for me, are they? And so you end up having to escape on your own, and Arthur thinks he's escaping like to beat the clock so that they don't come and all get killed. But when you arrive back at camp, no one seems to have noticed you left, which continues to lead me to believe that that they just abandoned him, and that they did that on purpose. They let him get kidnapped on purpose. And the last piece that I have of this is that towards the very end of your run with the gang, there's this whole Indian conflict that happens, and there's a part where you go to an oil field and are fighting and trying to save a bunch of the Indian people who you want to continue to live if you're being honorable. And there's a moment where Dutch and Arthur are in the oil company together, and they're looking through some files and trying to find some money. And as they leave, a bunch of more guys come in to start shooting, and Arthur gets knocked out. He falls on the ground and gets surrounded. And Dutch watches this happen and then turns and walks away. And that was the only time that I had seen and could confirm, like, yes, Dutch abandoned me here. And Arthur calls him out on it, and he's just like, no, I didn't see that happen. And it's like, yes, you did. But anyway, so I feel bad for Arthur all the way around, because he just had a crap life. He died of tuberculosis, and John, he gave all his stuff to John Marston, which was how you end up becoming John, which, of course, the first game you play as John, so it makes sense. And Red Dead Redemption was one of the first games I had ever played where your main character dies at the end of the thing, and you just become the next generation, and that you become Jack, his son. But anyway, you become Arthur, and while I'm here, I just want to talk about how the saddest part of this whole story was your horse. There is a scripted moment where your horse has to die, and for me, that was very difficult, because I had the same horse. His name was Roach. I had him since the very beginning of the game, and it was very sad. But it had to happen, because you end up becoming John, and John has his own horse, and you can't have your horse, which I still disagree with, but whatever. Anyway, that was a real tearjerker. Lee Allison really cried at that part. I was still just like, what's happening? But anyway, in Red Dead Redemption, John dies, and you become Jack, and there's one final mission that you go play to get revenge on John Marston. In this game, it is not that way. There is like a whole nother fourth of the game left when Arthur dies. You start off as John, and you're basically building up to John's life before Red Dead, the first one. And so you start off as John and Abigail and Jack, and y'all are trying to find work. Eventually you land on a ranch, and John protects the ranch from some bandits, but he also learns to farm and be a ranch hand. And eventually Abigail leaves him. And so in order to get them back, he buys the plot of land that he owns in the first game, and he, along with Uncle and Charles, who he finds, build the homestead that they have. It was a very, very long, it felt really long to me. the whole piece. It was nice to be John for a little bit. It was nice to see how all that story came together. But there was a lot in there that I don't know that necessarily needed to be there. Like, it wasn't bad content. It was just, okay, I'd kind of like to be at the end of this story now. So like Steven said, it kind of overstayed its welcome there a little bit. But the most frustrating thing for me was in the end of Arthur's story, you see him hand John all of his stuff. But when you jump in as John, all of my special masks that I had found as Arthur were missing. I didn't have any of the money that I had as Arthur. I was basically at square one with John, which was a little frustrating, but I don't know. And then to play the rest of the game as John, but with all of Arthur's stuff, just didn't feel right. Like, John had a very distinct look, and I don't remember very much other than clothes that you could affect in the first game. But it just felt weird, because like I kept my same look that I had Arthur doing. Like, I kept the short hair and long beard, and it just didn't look right on John. So I don't know. It was very weird. But all in all, I still loved the game. I thought it was really great. Once I beat John's story, I actually started exploring a lot more of the south area that had been opened up to you. And there's so much other stuff going on, and I want to eventually continue looking around down there. But I played Red Dead for the story, and I really enjoyed it. I still stand by my Game Awards comments where I don't know that it deserves to be up there for Best Narrative. I feel like it at least makes a little bit more sense to me now that I've beaten the whole thing. But anyway, I digress. Let's jump into some news, and I'll be real quick here. It's been a little bit of we've been off for Thanksgiving, so we didn't have a podcast Thanksgiving week. So there's a lot of other stories that we haven't maybe talked about that I've decided to skip over, just to get to some stuff that was this week. But anyway, we'll start with some stuff earlier this week. So Red Dead Online is happening now. That came out, I believe it was Tuesday, and then it's slowly been rolling out. I mentioned this story because Friday, today, if you're watching this live, we will be live streaming. Me and Steven will be live streaming Red Dead Redemption Online. So be sure to tune in for that. It's going to be a lot of fun. The second thing of news, or I guess really the first one that I'll really go into, Bungie has outlined how the annual pass is going to work, or kind of like given a roadmap for the annual pass. There's going to be 3, I guess the proper term would be expansions for for the game. They're kind of steering away from, like, we don't want to necessarily call this, I don't know that they didn't want to call it DLC, but it's like this is just like expanding the world and expanding the lore and a lot of other stuff, but not doing like a major thing like Forsaken or some of the other DLC that they've already done for the game. So the first one is going to be the Black Armory. It's going to introduce some new legendaries. It's going to introduce a new activity. It's going to the cool thing about this is they're going to be doing these seasons. So the seasons of the Forge is going on right now. There's a lot of things, a lot of updates that are going to be happening for everybody. For instance, the power level cap is going to be raising for everybody, and there's still going to be events like the Christmas event, the Valentine's Day event are still going to be happening for everybody. But then there's additional content that they're going to be doing for people who wanted to pay for it. And the first one is the Black Armory. That's the one we have the most information on now. It's going to be a new horde mode. It's supposed to be a matchmaking horde mode. Steven and I are afraid that it's going to be a timed mode. I think Steven may have confirmed with me that that's what it was going to be, but anyway, I love horde modes, so I'm excited to try this. I hope it's going to be better than like the I forget what they call it, the escalation protocol that's on Mars. I hope it's better than that. But a lot of the exotics they talked about, there's a new bow exotic that's really cool. It has like a void smoke bomb almost is what it does. So There's a lot of cool ones. There's a really nice sniper rifle that they're doing, and this is also going to add a new raid. It's going to take us back to a part of the city in the tower that we've never been to before, and a lot of people are theorizing that we're going to get the Last Wish, which was a hand cannon in the first game, through that mission. So you can read a lot of those, but my general take is that I'm excited that they're continuing to do more for the game. I'm glad that there's going to be some updates for people that aren't paying for the expansion, but at the same time, I do kind of like, I hope there's enough to justify the expansion that I've purchased. But I think between the three, there's going to end up being one. The next one is going to be Joker's Wild. They've talked a little bit about that, and then the third one is still unnamed. But I want to talk about that one a little bit because the image that they have is this exo character, or a robot character, and he's got a sword on his back, but he almost looks like the robots in the game are robots, but there's also the exo, which are guardians that have been put into exo people, whatever, robot people, like Cade. He was always clothed, though. This robot is like, he doesn't have anything on him other than a sword. So I'm really curious to see what this is about. I have a theory that this may be something to do with the new Hunter Vanguard. I think that would be a really nice thing if we'd have a story where we met and recruited the next Hunter Vanguard. But I don't know what they'd call that, other than I'm wondering if they're going to call it the Season of the Hunter, or I don't know. But that would be nice because they don't show a lot of love to hunters, so I would appreciate some love. Next story we'll talk about. This was one that genuinely just shocked me this week. I'm really glad it's happening though. Nintendo is ending its Nintendo's Creators Program next month. So at the end of December, the Creator Program will no longer exist. If you don't know what that is, it's basically a program for content creators like ourselves to partner with Nintendo and basically share revenue from YouTube videos and other things like that. It's the other option outside of that is to just get your video flagged, demonetized by Nintendo, and then Nintendo runs ads on it, and that's how that goes. So anyway, Nintendo has had a long struggle, and a lot of people have just chosen not to do or cover Nintendo content because of this group. And it's kind of weird because this group, Chortle Games, we've joined this program, and we still continue to get flagged and demonetized, and we're not even able to be monetized. When we were monetized, we couldn't monetize any of our Nintendo content, even being a part of this program. But there were some weird cases where people who, and recently there was a news story where they were going to start not allowing people who are a part of the program to live stream Nintendo games, but people who weren't a part of the program could live stream Nintendo games. It's all very weird, and it's been all very confusing. So I, for one, am just glad that they're just ending it in general, and Nintendo is going to be a lot more lenient with content creators making content using their video games. So this is a big win for content creators, big and small. So thank you, Nintendo. The last bit of news we're going to talk about what you can play for free this month, coming into December. We'll start with Xbox games for gold, because Xbox people are losers. I'm kidding. Sorry, I'm a PlayStation guy. So, all right, jumping in, they'll be able to play Cube 2, Dragon Age 2, Never Alone, and Mercenaries Playground of Destruction. I only know Dragon Age, and I'm not the biggest fan of Dragon Age games, but the rest of these I have no idea what they're even talking about. But so Xbox people kind of getting a bad deal, PlayStation people not getting a much better deal. A very strange selection for our PlayStation free PlayStation games for the month. The first one is Soma, which is a sci-fi horror game. It's got this very weird, almost like AR component to it, where like your character is seeing things digitally and it is having weird visions and whatnot. Looks very scary. It's a scary game that I've thought about picking up once or twice to do a Let's Play or a live stream of during Halloween. So next year, finally, we'll do Soma because I'll have it for free now. And then the other big title is Onrush, which is a car and motorcycle and four-wheeler based driving game. Very just kind of strange to me that would be a choice, because I feel like we got a turbo of something that's very similar motorcycle racing game. So just kind of weird to see that we got another one of those. The trailer though does make it look kind of cool, so I do kind of want to play it and look at it. Then the PS3 titles are Siren Den and Steinscape, and then Iconoclast, which is a PS Vita title, which is cross-buy for PlayStation 4, and then Papers, Please for PlayStation Vita. So Iconoclast, I've heard a lot of good stuff about, so I'm excited to try that on the PS4 as well. But anywho, that's all the news for this week. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this episode of ChortleCast. We do hope you've enjoyed it. If you did, there's a couple things you can do to help us out. Number one, if you're watching this video on YouTube, you're seeing me in the dark and dealing with this. So you can leave a comment on this video, like it, share it with your friends. We would appreciate that. If you're an audio listener, you can leave us a nice little review. That really helps us out. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook, both at Chortle Games. The podcast isn't the only thing we do on the channel, though. We've got content 6 days a week, so I'm going to go through what we got going on this weekend and coming up next week now. So tomorrow, Friday, we are going to be live streaming Red Dead Redemption 2 online. Steven and I will be doing that. Saturday, Steven and I think Jeremy are going to be doing some Division, live streaming that Saturday night. And then Monday, we'll have a Let's Play for you. It's going to be me and Brody. Yes, Brody's making a return to the channel on a Let's Play. It's unheard of. We're going to be playing Octodad. This will be part 3 of our Octodad series, so if you haven't seen any of those, try to, feel free to catch up on those this weekend. And then Tuesday, we'll have another Team Up Tuesday for you. I believe we're going to be playing Destiny because that's when the Black Armory drops, so we're going to want to check that out. Then on Wednesday, I will be doing a Let's Play of Thronebreaker, which is the Gwent Witcher 3 spin-off story mode that they've made a separate game. So you're going to see my first couple of minutes with that game in a Let's Play form. And then on Thursday, Steven is doing he does a live stream series. Right now he's playing through the Uncharted series. So you'll see him continue that journey then. And then Friday, we'll have another podcast for you, 12 o'clock Central Time, and a live stream that night. It'll be Smash Brothers that night. We'll be live streaming, and then we'll have another live stream for you Saturday. So anyway, thank you guys for watching. We will see you next time. I didn't turn off the mic. I just turned off the light, so you'd think I was gone, but I'm really still here. But now I'm gone. Bye.